Hi, everyone. I'm Casey. I'm the social and digital manager for California Grown. I want to thank all of you and all of you on the interwebs for joining us for our first Women in Ag panel on International Women's Day. I am thrilled that so many of you chose to join us. I'm thrilled that some people are joining us on the interwebs from wherever they are. And I'm thrilled that the Cherry Bombe team decided to come all the way to California, where we grow 50% of the produce, over 80% of the wine. We're number one in sustainable dairy. And I also have a number of other facts at the ready. If catch me after, I'll give you all the facts you want. So, Kerry Diamond is the founder of Cherry Bombe, and she's going to moderate our panel and introduce everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us and for being part of our Women in Ag panel experiment. Thank you. And let's talk a little bit about California agriculture, why it matters, and why women being leaders in it matters too. Thank you, Kerry.
Oh, my turn. Okay, I'm taking over. First off, happy International Women's Day. I just wanted to say that to everyone. Uh, and Casey and team, thank you so much for having us here. We're really, really thrilled. Casey, you and I didn't discuss this, but first off, I guess I'll tell you what Cherry Bombe is. For those of you who don't know, Cherry Bombe is a media and events company that's all about women in and around the world of food and drink. And we started 10 years ago. So this year is our 10-year anniversary. And it's been such a thrill being able to celebrate and spotlight so many women like our panelists and many of you in the audience over the past decade. We do have a magazine, so make sure all of you, if you didn't grab one already, get a magazine on the way out. And Casey, this might not be as much fun for our friends at home watching, but one thing we always do when we have a Cherry Bombe event is we ask everyone to turn to the person next to them or behind them, shake hands, bump elbows, whatever you prefer to do, and just introduce yourself and say hi. And we'll take 1 to 2 minutes to do that, because I always say if you come to a Cherry Bombe event and you don't leave with a new acquaintance or a friend or a business partner or something, I have failed at my job. And I don't want to come all the way to Sacramento from Brooklyn to have failed at my job today. So why don't we just take a minute and turn to your neighbor and say hi?
Can we shake hands officially? Yeah. A big event in New York every year. It's grown to be like 750 gathering of women and down. And when we do this with 750 women, I never get them back. It's like I'm standing on stage for like 10 minutes, banging on the mic, trying to like get their attention back. But yeah. But it's always it's always a nice break. Yeah. So it's a whole mix of things. I love the Joan Jett song. What was her band? The Runaway. Yeah. But it's also like a little firework bomb with the ears and ice cream dessert. So it's a lot of things. It's like all those things. No, it's a fun name, and I was grateful that we put the E on me. I don't know how we came up with that, but it just gave us that little twist. So
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. All right. Okay, everybody. So take a minute. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Casey, go for it. You can get their attention for me.
okay, guys. Hey, y'all. Let's get started.
It always takes a minute.
So we're gonna make sure you exchange email addresses with all your new friends. Follow each other on Instagram. Maybe not TikTok. Okay.
Casey, I feel like you should be up here. We have a podcast called Radio Cherry Bombe. I know a lot of you listen to it, so thank you. Casey has to have her own podcast one of these days. It's inevitable for those who know and love Casey, right? Round of applause for Casey's podcast. Thank you. But again, thank you so much to the California grown folks for bringing us all together. As Casey said, it is so important that more and more women get into the world of farming and the surrounding world. We've learned at Cherry Bombe, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And that's one of the reasons we've loved shining a spotlight on so many women in this industry. And I think this panel really represents just so many facets of the agriculture community. And first, we're going to hear from Undersecretary Christine Birdsong, who's going to say a few words. And then we have our panel. As you can see, we have a lot of folks on the panel. I will introduce everybody after Undersecretary speaks. I've asked them to keep their remarks and their answers to the questions brief. They are all incredibly smart women who could probably be on a panel all by themselves. So their brevity is not reflective of their thoughts on these subjects. It's just that I've asked them to be brief. And of course, we will have questions afterwards. So if you have questions, just we'll have a moment at the end and you can raise your hand and we'll take some questions from the audience. But Undersecretary, we're so honored to have you with us today. And I know you have a few remarks.
I have a few remarks. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me. And I know Secretary Ross was disappointed she couldn't make it today. She is testifying at a budget hearing across the street. But her loss was my gain, and I very enthusiastically said, I'll do it. So thank you for having me here. So welcome to Sacramento. You may have noticed when you walked in the front doors that we've got a little bit of a disarray happening across the street, some construction on the Capitol building. They are basically renovating the entire new, quote unquote, new section of the building, but they're leaving the front, the pretty historical part as is, so we can still enjoy that. But it is kind of a mess right now. And looking at it, you might be reminded of what a farm field looks like this time of year. But what it looks like, it's kind of muddy, it's dirty, it's got puddles in it because we've had this glorious rain. But what it looks like right now, as you know, isn't as important as long as you have that ability to visualize, to look ahead, to plan ahead, and then put in the work that you're going to need to do to really get to the good part, right? That's the way I think of all of the foundational work that we're doing here at CDFA and in partnership with our agricultural industry and the work that we have been doing on climate smart agriculture. Now, when we talk about climate smart ag, what are we really talking about? Well, I think we're talking about the future and what the future is going to look like for farmers, for consumers, and for our workers, and really for our rural communities throughout the state because they're built around agriculture. California's Central Valley, and you might know this, holds 1% of the farmland in the United States. But we're responsible for 25% of the food production that feeds the rest of the country. And think about that for a minute. That's 1% of US farmland, and we feed 25% of the country. A stat like that isn't just important. It says that we are invaluable, and it says that the world needs us, and the world needs what we grow. And that's not just true for the Central Valley. It's true of the Central Coast. It's true of the high desert, wine country. It's true of agriculture in the entire state of California. And I think that says something special about who we are. So when we talk about being a leader, about being on the cutting edge of what's next for agriculture, where on this planet do you think that's going to happen? Now, you can see where I'm going with this. It's not exactly rocket science, but then again, maybe it kind of is a little bit. When we look at the direction that we're going in agriculture, we have robots that kill weeds. We have drones that monitor our yields. We have sensor-driven drip irrigation that delivers exactly the amount of water that a plant needs, exactly when it needs it. Now, all of these technologies weren't even a twinkle in a millennial's eye, and they are now the norm for most of our farms here in California. Now, I don't want to take anything away from almonds or dairy or grapes, But you could make the argument that California's top crop, the thing that we harvest most in this age of modernization, is data. We collect more information about our topography, our soils, our water tables, our fertilizer schedules, our yields, more information on those things than ever before. And that trend is only going to continue. And when you combine our ag workforce with their expertise and their experience with the natural blessings of the soil, this region and its tremendous productivity truly can't be duplicated anywhere else on the planet. And the same people who produce this bounty deserve to enjoy it. To put it simply, they deserve to live well and enjoy an environment that is as healthy as the food that they grow. But the hard truth right now is that not all of us in this state enjoy those benefits. 22% of our Central Valley residents live below the federal poverty line. That region experiences the third worst food hardship in the nation, and it's ranked nearly dead last in terms of racial inclusion. I think we can do better. And this is California, and this is California agriculture. And we have the ability, and I think we also have the responsibility to do better. We aren't just after high yields and technology here. We are also trying to build resilient, local food systems that drive high road employment and broad adoption of sustainable technologies and practices. Innovation is what California does best, whether that's growing the best food or inventing the best technology or making the best movies. In agriculture, innovation often means robotics, automation, and a whole host of data-driven gains that keep California on the leading edge. And as we pursue these gains, we need a labor force with the technical skills to operate in that advanced environment. Barn-mounted weather stations, tractors driven from an iPad, fertilizer dispensed by an algorithm. Just imagine the workforce that we're going to need to operate all of that, to fix all of that, to make sense of all of the data that we get from this new technology. So we must, as a population, as agriculture stakeholders, farmers, ranchers, as a government, we have to recognize that all ag labor is skilled labor. And frankly, I think that's always been true, even if the public assumptions about our farm workforce don't always match that. But it's certainly true today, and it's going to remain true for as long as we can see into the future. In the very near future, many more workers in our sector are going to have to be highly skilled operators, programmers, mechanics, software developers. Are they still going to get their boots dirty? Yes. In fact, that is one thing about farming that is just never going to change. And that's a good thing, right? Because it's something that people in agriculture want. That's why you do what you do. That contact with the earth, with the soil, with the environment, with the sunshine and the fresh air. It's that physical work with the tangible results, the kind of reward that can only come from seeing something that you've worked on, something you've nurtured, come to life and make it to harvest. And in this age, though, again, back to harvesting data is also becoming second nature to these same workers. It drives and informs almost all of the decisions that we make on the daily, on our farms and our ranches, and it will tomorrow even more than it does today. As each farm and each ranch and each business puts these innovations to work, our industry will steadily become the source. Well, I would say it already is, but it will continue to become the source of world-renowned climate-smart food and ag systems. The synergies that come from that are what I find the most exciting. Our workers, our tech, the best practices, the research, and the on-the-ground science that evolves all together as a unit. That's what's relatively new, and I think that's what's really exciting. There's just one more topic I was asked to cover today, and that is working as women in a relatively male-dominated industry. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that California Women for Ag has definitely been there and done that, right? I'm sure you've talked about this and thought about this and lived this and experienced this. But it's still important, I think, to acknowledge because it's true. And it's still a huge factor in so many of the opportunities that are available to us. But isn't it also true that the barriers we would have been talking about 30 years ago or so aren't the same barriers that we face today? And in fact, I would say that the barriers that we all, as women in agriculture and farming and ranching, the barriers that we face today are very similar, identical to the barriers that also face men who are trying to enter agriculture. And I would say that's the cost of land tenure and just the overall cost of entering agriculture, the cost of inputs like fertilizer, the cost of ag machinery, and then, of course, the education, the experience, the skill, the technical know-how that you have to enter this field. It's not a simple thing to do. But when I look around the department here at CDFA, we have a lot of women, especially on the fourth floor, which is the executive level. You know, we have Secretary Ross. We have our legislative director, Rachel O'Brien, our state veterinarian, Dr. Annette Jones. 7 out of 9 of our divisions are run by women. And if you ever get the opportunity to tour one of our laboratories and our research facilities, you will see many, many, many women scientists at work there. So it feels good to be a part of that, even though we're not 100% there by any means. But the last quick thing I want to touch on is mentorship and the importance of mentorship. Now, in my life, I had a lot of great mentors. My dad, my friends' dads, some of the bosses that I had all believed in me and were encouraging and gave me all kinds of advice and tips. And I would have to say that if we're thinking about a mentor in those terms, I never did have a woman mentor, except for Secretary Ross, right? I mean, you just be in the same room with Secretary Ross and you are mentored. But I never had a woman mentor. But when I think about it, there were always women who were leading by example. They were mentoring by example. My first job on Capitol Hill, one of my colleagues was Dee Dee Diadamo, who is now on the State Water Resources Control Board. And at the time, she was the water person for the congressman we were working for. And she used to talk to me on the phone on the way from walking home after dropping her kids off at school, talking work with me, teaching water policy to me. I've had the opportunity to work with Darcy Vetter, who is the USTR Agriculture Ambassador. I have sat in meetings with Senator Dianne Feinstein. I got to meet Ann Veneman when she was holding the highest office in agriculture as USDA Secretary. And I remembered her because she battled through breast cancer when she was at the peak of her career. And I remembered that when I went through my own battle with breast cancer, 10 years now. I'm away from that. And she was a role model, not just for attaining that highest office for a woman in agriculture, but what she went through on a personal level and kept the entire ship afloat the whole time. Very, very meaningful. So I say that women mentor each other by showing each other how to do it. We don't mansplain, right? My dad and my friends' dads and my bosses, it was all mansplaining in the nicest sense of the word. But we show by doing. So I think I'm just going to end it there, and I'm going to leave you with this. Get out there and get it done. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Undersecretary Birdsong, and thank you for leading by example. You're also amazing. I'd love to know some stats on female farmers. Have the
Okay.
numbers?
We're going to start there. Funny you
Have
should
the
ask me that question.
Yes. Have the numbers increased in California? Can you give us a state of the state?
Well, I mean, I would first tell you that women have always been in agriculture, right? Like whether they were at home doing the paperwork, whether they were teaching school in rural community or holding the home front steady while their husbands were able to go out and focus 100% on farming. Women have always been a part of agriculture, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that. Now, when we talk about our statistics for agriculture and women in ag, the USDA Ag Census does that for us, and it's every 5 years. So 2022 was last time they did it. I don't have that information yet. So what I have is from 2017. And I can tell you that Oh my gosh. I wrote this down. I forgot my reading glasses. Anyways, I can see this. 36% of the US producers are women. Oh, goodness. I think I can do it. It's also my bad writing. 90, not, I'm sorry, not 90,
Okay.
9% of US farms are run by women. We have 1.2 million women farmers in the US. And guess what state has the highest percentage?
California?
No.
Oh.
I am sorry to say that would go to Arizona. They have a 49% farms owned by women there. Texas has the most farms by the numbers, farms owned by women. And that is 156,000 women in agriculture in Texas. California, we've got 46,000, and we are 33% of our farmers. That's where the stats are today. I expect when we get the 2022 numbers that it's going to be a little bit higher, but I think it's also important to recognize that agriculture in California is also constricted in the past 5 years for a lot of reasons: drought, expense, market, trade. We are impacted by those factors just like every other state.
Okay. Well, we're going to meet some of those farmers right now. I'd like to introduce our panel. Amber, we're going to start with you. All the way at the end, Amber in the hat. That's how we're going to, that's how you know where we're starting. Amber Balakian is a fourth generation farmer, and she is co-owner of Balakian Farms. Next, oh, save your applause. We'll applaud everybody when we finish. Next to her, we have Chrissy Scomegna, who is the co-founder, co-owner of oh my gosh, I was trying to memorize all this. Um, Hold on one second. This is why I thought I had all this in my brain. Boonville Barn Collective. Chrissy is also a member of the Bomb Squad, so we're so happy to finally meet Chrissy in person. Okay, then we've got Sarah. Uh, See, now I've spooked myself. Okay, Sarah Schaffner. Sarah is the farmer and co-owner of Sweet Thistle Farms, a beautiful farm that does cut flowers and pumpkins. Then we've got Jennifer Talent Joseph. Jennifer is the you have a few titles, Jennifer. You are the events manager, you are co-owner, and you are a farmer at the Groves on 41, along with your mom, Karen, who I want to acknowledge in the audience. Hi, Karen. Then we have Glenda Humiston, who is the vice president of the University of California's Agriculture and Natural Resources Division. A fascinating organization that I hope you all look up after this because you're doing incredible work for the state of California and its people. And then I want to acknowledge the trailblazer to my left. We have Amelia Ceja of Ceja Vineyards. Amelia is to our knowledge, the only Mexican-American woman to be president of a winery in the United States. So that is incredible. We have so much to talk about with you and everything that you've done, but thank you for the trailblazing that you've done. So let's give everyone a round of applause. And then we're going to go right into the questions. All right, Glenda. So you were raised on a cattle ranch in Colorado, and you were a 4-H member. I would love to know, did you consider being a farmer or a rancher? Why or why not?
Actually, I desperately wanted to take over the family farm
Yeah.
and actually went to Colorado State University to get my bachelor's in animal science,
Mhm.
focusing on beef production. But still had a little bit of a wandering foot, so I did Peace Corps right after college in North Africa, setting up a large dairy operation. But unfortunately, when I came home, I got a message that too many of our kids get. My parents both pointed out, we both have a job off the farm to keep the farm going. We have a small cow-calf operation. We used to have a dairy, which was a little more lucrative, but, 24/7, 365, that got a little old too. They said, you need to go do something else. So that's why I looked around and decided the thing I could do to support family farming was policy, program development, which is what I've done since then.
Okay.
But I would have loved to have taken over the family farm.
Amber, you are a fourth generation farmer. You are a graduate of the University of California, San Diego, and of Harvard. You made the decision to come back to the family farm. Can you tell us about that decision?
Yeah, so it wasn't an easy decision, but originally I kind of felt like took what I had for granted growing up in the Central Valley around ag. And so when I went to the East Coast, I was one of the only students in my class that were involved in ag. And, my professors and my fellow classmates, they really encouraged me to value what I had. And originally I was going to go the corporate route, kind of follow what everybody else was doing. But I decided, you know what? Like I have this opportunity, I have something unique and special, and so I'm really gonna take that opportunity and go back and help my family manage their farm. So that's what I did.
Okay. Amelia, farming has always been your life. So your parents were farm workers and you picked grapes as a young woman. When and why did you decide you wanted your own vineyard and winery one day?
Uh, well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I just want to mention that my auntie is here from Mexico, Chilo, and also my sister in law, Moni. And we're all in agriculture in Mexico too. Um, as an immigrant, I arrived in the Napa Valley as a young girl, and my father worked in the vineyards. So the very first weekend, he invited me to go see what he was doing. It was harvest time. And I remember tasting those perfectly ripened, succulent Merlot grapes at a very famous vineyard now, Tocalum Vineyards in Oakville. And I told my dad, I didn't speak a word of English. I had just arrived like 3 days before. And I told my dad, I'm going to have a vineyard of my own someday. And I also met my future husband and partner that day, these young boys that had arrived here from Michoacan. I'm from Jalisco. And they felt the same way. So fast forward to 1980, and I'm also a UC San Diego alum. Awesome. And Pedro and I were married, and we spent every weekend looking for land. And voila, in 1983, we bought our first property in Napa Valley, and the rest is history.
When you told your father you wanted your own winery one day, what did he say to you?
He said, "Of course, mijita." Well, and I think that is such an excellent way to support children. I mean, he knew. I'm sure he knew that. I mean, it was going to be very hard, and I had just arrived here. But he said, "Of course, mijita, my little daughter."
I did read on your website, familia is life at Ceja.
Yes, and you all have to come and visit us.
Chrissy, I want to turn to you now. You worked in hospitality and as a chef prior to being a farmer.
Mhm.
Had you farmed at all before you owned a farm?
So I used to always say no to this question. I grew up in suburban Wisconsin, and it was very suburban. And I sometimes forget that I used to go to rural Wisconsin every weekend as a kid, when my dad got the idea that he really wanted to have his own vineyard in Wisconsin. So I grew up prepping the land for planting new vines, picking rocks out of the ground, putting grow tubes around all the new vines, pruning, harvesting. So I forget about this time because I don't think at the time I really enjoyed it. But there was a lot of like hobby farming around like the people that I grew up with. I remember one year my dad got the idea that he wanted to have 100 tomato plants and bring them to the local farmers market, which we did not do, but we did have 100 tomato plants. And we did not know what we were doing, and we put all the tomato cages upside down and thought, "This is how this works, right?" And then they all fell over, and we just gave everybody that we knew tomatoes because we had so many. So farming was, like, the thing that we did on the weekends, whether we wanted to or not. But then I worked as a chef, and when I decided that cooking was not what I wanted to do long term, I went and got my master's in agriculture and food policy, and thought that maybe policy was the right route. But after having my hands in food on a regular basis and really loving food production, I knew that that was more of my passion instead of working in policy, and I needed something that was a little bit faster moving and something that I could influence on a different scale. So yes and no.
So one of the I have a lot of follow-up questions, but one is I did not know They were making wine in Wisconsin?
Oh, yeah, it's not that great, but they have it. Ours wasn't that great. Lots of
It's
vinegar.
no California wine. Is that what
No,
you're
no, not
saying?
at all.
So, Jennifer, similar to Chrissy, you were working in hospitality previously. The idea for the family olive farm was your mom's, correct?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
It's
So,
her
Karen.
fault.
So, what has been the biggest surprise for you about farm operations?
So the biggest surprise, I guess, was how not so different it really was.
Mhm.
Being in events and hotel management, you have backup plan on backup plan. Um, you're always going to be thrown surprises.
Mhm.
There's learning from your counterparts and realizing there's a lot of resources that you need to and want to know. I think the biggest surprise was living on a farm and realizing that you can run out of water.
Mhm.
That's not fun. Learning how to use that equipment. But then realizing that the amount of resources you have around you, much like when you look into where you want to sell your products, you look at your markets and you do that research. Well, I did the same thing with my customers. What was the most important thing for them? And what's the most important thing for our product and our fruit, and which became olive oil, and where did that need to go? So it was very, very similar, which I think was probably the biggest surprise.
Okay. Sarah, so you are a fifth generation farmer, which is amazing. I would love to know how is your farm different today from what your parents and your grandparents had?
So my farm's different in the fact that I let the public come out and join us and visit regularly.
So let me stop you for a second. So explain to everybody because they can actually visit your farm.
Yeah, my farm's located in Fresno County in the town of Clovis. I have a U-pick flower and pumpkin operation where you can come out and visit us seasonally. My grandparents, great grandparents came to California in the 1880s and grew wheat, rice in Northern California, where I grew up. And so, I'm fortunate to have agriculture on both sides of my family, where my dad had walnuts and prunes, and it's interesting in the fact that I grow flowers, which I started with my great grandmother at about 4 to 5, planting the flower beds at our house, and it's kind of full circle today that's I grow flowers because they're beautiful and I enjoy them, and so it's nice to share with the community. So there's major differences, but it's still putting a seed and watching the satisfaction of what comes out of the soil.
So you farmed with your great grandmother. That's remarkable.
She lived to be 104 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Do you know what their biggest concern was? Your great grandparents, your grandparents, your parents, versus what your biggest concern is today?
I think succession, and family dynamics. I'm a pretty just bluntly honest person, but there isn't always room, like Linda said, for somebody to come back. And as parents, you're kind of, I have come from a family of 4. I have 3 younger brothers, and so there isn't always room for somebody to come back to farm, and encouraging the children to still be a part of something. And I think that they often thought of that in all generations. My great 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 grandparents, there were 9 children in that family, and 2 of them, 2 of the boys really took what that operation was and expanded it, but not just in agriculture. This is when California wasn't settled. They put in the Western Canal, which is a major water source, and the Dunsmuir Dam up in Northern California. So they might not have been out cultivating the wheat and rice that year, but they were putting in infrastructure that's critical to today.
Wow. That's remarkable.
If I could tag on to that, the succession planning is a huge issue for farm families, not just in California, across the nation. I should have added earlier, my dad passed away last year. And one of the things my sisters and I are now doing is trying to figure out how we can move the ranches into my nieces and nephews' generation. And it's challenging. It really is. But it's the kind of thing that I think a lot of farm families are dealing with.
Yeah.
You often see farms jumping generations because of.
Glenda, I wanted to ask you about attracting more women to farming. Undersecretary Birdsong, it was interesting when you said that the challenges facing women farmers are the same as the challenges facing male farmers today, but it's clear we do need to attract more women to the field. you are in touch with so many farmers, but also so many citizens of California. I was just curious from your perspective, what is it that women farmers bring to the table or the party that is different?
Well, I think we've all known for a long time that women in general are perhaps a bit better at multitasking than men. I think I can safely say that without getting in too much trouble.
Sorry, guys. I know we've got a few of you in
Sorry,
the
sorry,
room.
guys. But I think that's a general acknowledged reality. Um, and there's nothing that requires more multitasking than farming.
Mhm.
And I think for small and medium scale farms in particular, to be successful, you really do have to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing and a curse in some ways, because the blessing part is if you've got a larger family, it does open up some potential job opportunities for siblings or children or other family members. But I often worry about what we do to put too many hats on small farmers.
Mhm.
We force them to go create their farmers markets, haul their produce there, just do some marketing, do the value added, and does that leave them time to actually do the farming?
Mhm.
It's a real concern I think we ought to be looking at. How do we make sure that the full support system is there for our small and medium scale farmers to be successful?
Yeah.
As far as attracting women to it, we need to attract more women and anybody really, frankly, to farming
Mhm.
in general, because it's not just the actual job of production ag. It's everything that makes production ag happen. Before that first seed goes in the ground to well after harvest, processing, distribution,
Mhm.
there are so many career paths related to agriculture and food. And we have a hard time getting folks to think about that because sometimes people think the only two jobs in agriculture are farmer or farm worker. And that's really something we're trying to get folks to think beyond.
All right. Speaking of hats, Amber, since you wear many hats and you're literally wearing a hat today, I felt like a little bit of a stalker when Amber walked in the room because I'd watched so many videos with Amber. I felt like I knew her, but we don't know each other. Now we do. Um, in a lot of your interviews, Amber, you talked about the importance of equity and diversity in farming. And I would love to know if you could share one idea for attracting more women of color to farming.
Yeah, I think, I mean, predominantly farming is like a generational profession, or you need a lot of capital to get into it. So, and I think this statistic's accurate, but less than 1% of farmers are African American females, which is pretty staggering. So I think that, I mean, I have a lot of ideas of how to attract, but educating the youth to look at farming in the same way that they would, look at becoming a lawyer or a doctor. I think that's really where it starts. And then outreach, developing new organizations. These are more than one idea, but and then funding, but not just like throwing money at it, but um, you know, really helping walk people through the process because it is very intimidating. I've gone through the process myself of getting funding. And so I think, eliminating a lot of those barriers is definitely going to attract more minorities in general, really, to farming.
Mhm. Glenda, I feel like you might want to say something. I see a lot of nodding.
Just agreeing strongly with everything she says. And it's part of that campaign to get the
Mhm.
word out that
Yeah.
the good thing that helps us nowadays, I think, is food is sexy.
Mhm.
As people are getting really interested in food and where their food comes from and more backyard edible landscapes and that,
Mhm.
I think it is opening the door for people to think about agriculture and farming as a career.
It's also remarkable how much California is doing with school children, which we haven't really touched on today. Thank you. Thanks to the California Grown folks, I was able to interview Secretary Ross yesterday, and she is a truly remarkable woman. I mean, I almost had to be dragged out of the room because I could have talked to her the entire day, but she is very busy. And when we finally stopped the recording, we were talking more about everything that California is doing for children, school children in particular. And it's incredible to know that your state is the only one that has universal school lunch. And that's so shocking to me that California is the only one right now. And just amazing to see how you're leading the nation in that. Um, Amelia, I want to talk to you about farm workers. We're talking a lot about farmers today, but there would be no food without our farm workers. The rights of migrant workers is incredibly important to you. Female farm workers are particularly vulnerable on so many fronts, as we all know. I would love if you could tell us one thing in particular you're doing at Seha to help female farm workers in general, that your fellow farmers could borrow from.
Well, I'd say how we are. At Seha Vineyards, we value every single team member that we have, and uh, there is a very large population of women that are actually engaged in grape growing. It's not just the men, and they are truly the backbone of our industry. Without them, we wouldn't be able to make that award-winning Napa Valley Cabernet. So, and it is, I also want to add that it is highly skilled labor. We wouldn't just hire anyone that didn't know how to prune vines, because you can totally ruin the vine. So, but women have played a major role in the wine industry. However, it's been mostly working in the vineyards. And we really encourage uh, our women colleagues to actually learn more of the biology and botany of grape growing, but also, I mean, we to grow their own food as well, because I'm also a UC Master Gardener, so it's you teach by example, and so we make sure that their children are also have access to really wonderful ingredients, homegrown ingredients. From we actually have a plot in front of our Mama Juanita's house, and it's farm, and any of our we make it easy for women to have really great food at home.
Okay, so important, obviously. Thank you. Chrissy, I want to go to you. Glenda talked about all the hats that farmers have to wear today. You're shaking your head. You know about all those. More and more farmers are entering the world of packaged goods, which is a whole specialty unto itself. You have your spice line, your olive oil, your beans. Amber, you have your gorgeous tomato sauce and your pickles. Jennifer has olive oil. Amelia, you have your award-winning wine. Chrissy, could you give us a piece of advice for farmers who are looking to get into packaged goods or consumer packaged goods?
Yeah, so our farm, the only thing that we sell fresh is strawberries, and it's a very small quantity of what we do. The majority of what we do is grow about 85,000 chili plants, and we hand harvest all those chilies and dry them all for chili powders, chili flakes, and whole dried chilies. So mostly I get overwhelmed when farmers who grow fresh produce talk about having to move all of that fresh produce right as it's ready to new markets. And I think, wow, I'm so glad I can ship this in the mail and it's not going to go bad on the way to the consumer. And so I think that for us, we grew chilies and started making this chili powder because it was something that we wanted ourselves. And we now have a lot of different kinds of chili powders, but it's really important to find something that works really well in your region and that you enjoy doing. We tried growing saffron briefly, but the facts of just like cleaning and harvesting the saffron was really not enjoyable to us and was way too much work. And even if it's a very expensive crop to be able to sell, it just wasn't worth it for us. We didn't like it, and it was too finicky. But growing chili peppers and the community that we created around that made a lot of sense for us. And so I think that having something that you're enjoying doing, even though it's work, that you can really get people in your community excited about, and if they can use it at home too and get a love for what you're doing on your farm is really helpful. And then it might not be the hippest product that everyone's looking for, but having different pantry staples that you can offer a better version of is really nice. People are used to buying whatever kind of chili flakes at the grocery store or using just plain chili powders. And we offer branded California grown versions that have the harvest date on them, which is not something that you'd get at the stores. So being able to showcase what makes your farm special and figuring out ways to make yourself unique in the market is a really important thing to do.
Okay. We had a beautiful soup last night. The California Prunes folks hosted a dinner at Hawks. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Hawks. And there was a beautiful soup with your pepper on it. So we're so happy to get to try it in California. All right. Jennifer, this is a question for you. This might not be the case in California, but in New York, in particular, New York City, a lot of people romanticize farming and they talk about having a farm of their own one day. Since both you and your mother pivoted to farm life, I'd love to know one piece of advice to those who dream of pivoting themselves.
Keep it short and simple. Just do it. No. But you know what? It's actually not even just New York. In California, we've got amazingly dense populations. We're in one of them. And it was even a conversation last night. Oh, I want to get out. I want to go to the Central Coast. I want a farm of my own. You can absolutely do it. The backyard farming that we were talking about. The most important thing you can do is figure out what you want to farm, what you want to do. Go to your farmers markets and meet the folks that are bringing them in off the fields, cutting the flowers out of their own fields and coming in and seeing if that's what you want to do. Do you have the room for it? Do you want to purchase the land for it? Is it something you want to keep simple? Um, and get to know where it is you want to be. Farm trails are absolutely amazing. The tourism within our state is growing exponentially. And the great thing about California is we can just jump in our cars and go to the Central Coast or go a couple hours out. In New York, you can't do quite as much, not as many vehicles there, I guess, um, but you can absolutely, if you can dream it, honestly, you can absolutely do it.
You said farm trails. What does that mean?
So each county, and I know YOLO is somebody's YOLO. YOLO County has got an amazing farm trail, and in San Luis Obispo County, where we're at, we have a growing farm trail of 30 farmers, and we're all small farms. And we don't all have our doors open on a regular basis, but you have access to who has chickens, who has alpacas, who has olives or flowers. And we have a new dairy coming on board for cheeses. And you can visit those farms and visit, a lot of times they'll do an open farm day where you have an entire weekend where you can go visit all 30 or 40 of those farms, but later have that map. And when you're just driving through town, hey, can I come visit? Can I see your operation and see what you do and see if I want to dip my toe into it?
Glenda.
Yeah, I can't say enough about farm trails, and not just farm trails. I mean, you're seeing variations on it. Like Sonoma Marin County has a cheese trail. I think it's about 30 some dairies that have now went into cheese production. What I see is some real opportunity we have an agritourism program at UC Cooperative Extension to help farmers figure out how to take advantage of that. Up in Sonoma County, one of the things we've been working on there for many years is our farm trail and our art trail and our bed and breakfast association and our wineries, all really collaborating with each other so that we're hitting the tourists to say, what a comprehensive experience you can have. Come spend the weekend, go to a winery, go to a farm, go to an art studio. You're going to love it. Stay at a B&B. And I think for the tourism industry to not take advantage of the agricultural and food sector is really missing the boat in some places in the state.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I've known about wine trails. Obviously, California is famous for those, but I didn't know there was the farm equivalent. So that's fantastic. And Glenda, you kind of teed up my next question perfectly, which is going to be for Sarah. In researching all of you, it was so clear how important collaboration is to the agriculture community. And Sarah, you in particular, your farm, you share a farm, essentially. I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about that, but just also talk about why collaboration is so important.
I think if I had to have another name, it would probably be sourcing and connecting, and whether that's people to a farm or just agriculture in general in California. My farm is actually at a goat creamery, the only goat creamery in Fresno County, and it makes it special in that fact that we started at the same time, but we bring the people out to us. And then I saw the opportunity that if you don't want to visit the farm, I can take the farm to you through a CSA box. And in my CSA box, here I am being a distributor, a grocery store, all of these different hats that I'm wearing. So then I decided I'm going to let you bring all my farmers markets friends products as well. I'll shop the market for you. I'll deliver my fruit and vegetables and flower bouquets, but you can add ground beef and goat cheese. And so community is important. It's important to help whether it's a woman or just I'll help any farmer. And anybody will say that about me. And so um not all of them can wear all of those hats. And so, and I'm really good at killing things too. I'm not like always the best farmer. We have crop failures, and it's about being able to get something that is sustainable to my customers. And so they help me when my crop has failed or I've over irrigated, or so I rely on the community and they rely back on it for me for information. It's what makes our little world go around.
Melia, I saw you nodding a lot about collaboration.
Yeah. Well, sorry. Yes. Back soon after Prohibition, the very first vintners, the Mondavi family included, founded the Napa Valley Vintners. So we, as soon as we launched our brand, we became members right away, and all new members are assigned a mentor. So that was very helpful to literally to navigate and to learn how to use all of the resources. So it is. I mean, as you all know, that we promote Napa Valley. Secondly, we promote our brands, but we literally first promote Napa Valley, and that is has literally brought attention to our valley so much more than Sonoma, and we have vineyards in Sonoma as well. But because we're united in one voice in Napa, and hopefully soon we'll be able to do that in Sonoma too. But it's much bigger than Napa. But it is very important to be able to share not just knowledge, but like our neighbors now with labor shortages, we actually are able to also share a lot of our wonderful team when someone is picking Cabernet Sauvignon, but we have early ripening varietals like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, then we are able to actually, share one of our crews. And it's very important because grapes don't wait, for the workers. I mean, literally when let's say the bricks is 24 and those grapes need to come into the winery. So it's been very helpful for, in the wine industry, but I know that it happens as well in agriculture.
Okay. Well, you're all such amazing ambassadors for California Grown. I mean, I know being in New York, how much that label means to me, and just getting to know some of the people behind what California Grown means has been so special, I'm sure, for all of you out there as well. Undersecretary Birdsong, I was hoping you could plant some seeds for us and just sort of wrap things up.
Well, we've got a room full of women in agriculture here. And just Monday, I was in another room that was mostly women in agriculture as well. I was speaking to the Cal Poly Ag Leadership Group, which is not just women, but this particular class had 17 out of 20 of their members were women, just a handful of guys in there. And that gives me so much hope and so much optimism for the future. These individuals, the men and the women, but the women are studying things like ag communications, ag education, ag engineering, water engineering, sustainability, pest protection sciences, just all kinds of fascinating things that I never heard of. I don't even think were around when I was in school. And they are all so passionate about what they're doing and excited and enthusiastic. And it made me feel the same way. And now today, I've got my second bump in the week of feeling really good and really excited about what we do. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I said this to Casey earlier, but between meeting Secretary Ross, meeting you, Undersecretary, Glenda, all the farmers, everyone in this room, I said, I wish we could move all of you to the United Nations in New York and you could just solve all the world's problems. And Casey said, please do not take them out of California. We need them here. So I promise, Casey, we won't do that. One thing I did not talk about, you might have noticed, is climate change. Climate change is obviously the most important thing facing farmers today. But I wanted to give you all a break. I know all you've talked about is climate change for a very long time. And even in New York, we've been very aware of the weather that you're going through right now and how challenging it's been. Chrissy, I think you read that you had 18 days of rain. It was more rain than all of 22.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Lots of rain, lots of snow in a place that we're not used to getting snow ever. So it's been interesting.
Yes. And we've been out here for a week in your beautiful state, and I think we've worn everything in our suitcase all at once. So if you see me walking around with lots of layers on, that's what's going on. But anyway, wanted to open up not just to questions, but I know we have a lot of farmers in the audience. Three Sisters, I know you're somewhere back there. If any of you want to make a statement in addition to asking a question, I know some of us would love to meet the other farmers in the room. So please don't be shy if you want to just introduce yourself and tell us about your farm and what you do. So any questions? Or
Wave your
anyone
hand at
want to
me.
introduce themselves? Casey's got the mic.
I've got the, okay, here I come.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kat from Three Sisters Gardens in West Sacramento. We grow seasonal veggies and we work with youth in our community. Um, I hold the position of farm manager assistant. Um, there's a lot that we do for the community. We do a lot of distribution for low income housing in the area. And we also sell to restaurants and to schools. But is there anything you want to add? I'm here with my sister Chris today. Here too. She's the events coordinator and also our compost site operator at the farm. Um, as they mentioned, a lot of small farms, we have to wear many hats and we're fairly new too. So both of us, we do wear many hats. But if you do have any questions, you can feel free. I'm sure there's a lot that I missed out. But
Can you tell us how you got started?
um, yes, actually, our founder is Alfred Melbourne. Do you want to take over? Oh yeah. How So Alfred is actually my partner, so I hear his story all the time. How Three Sisters got started. He did 18 years in prison, and when he got out, he did jobs where, working hours on end, not feeling rewarded at all. And so he saw this need in his community to give back to the children who are kind of going in the direction that he ended up in. And he was like, no, that can't happen. I need to provide some sort of opportunity for them. And that's when he started farming in a guerrilla garden, like an empty plot of land that he did not own, which we still farm today. Yeah, but he started the guerrilla garden, and this was in 2018, so like maybe 5 years ago. And yeah, since then we've grown. And we came in 2020. So we were actually working with Resoil, which is like a composting organization here in Sacramento. But that's how we came on. And then we never left. So here we are.
Tell us your website so folks can look you up.
Yeah, so we're www.3sistersgardens.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Does anyone have another question or want to
Karen,
tell us a little bit about
I
yourself?
might call on Karen. Karen, we got to hear. Karen's like,
Yeah.
what? Karen,
She's making a face at me.
I would love to know, since the original idea started with you for the Groves on 41, what made you want to pivot to farming?
Oh, piss off my husband.
She's not kidding.
We were coming up and visiting relatives in the Central Coast. We were in the Los Angeles area, and his health wasn't real good, and he was just sitting around too much after work. And so I went up to UC Davis and learned about olive farming and all the mechanization they were doing in it, where you could actually maybe make a few dollars on a bottle of olive oil. And I came to him at the end of 2009, and I said, we're going to go up to the Central Coast and become farmers. He said, I'm no damn farmer. And I said, yes, you are. Of course, that would make Jennifer the farmer's daughter. But, but so we came up and, oh, no, I didn't. I gave him a year. I said, you've got a whole year to just tell me you want to do anything else but what we're doing right now, which is just sitting around. And he didn't come up with anything at the end of the year. So we planted 4,000 trees, and he mumbled and grumbled. And it wasn't until I realized when we were we never stopped vacationing. He loved vacationing, but we were on a ship. And I'd left the room and I came back, and he was talking to all the folks about how he's got this olive farm and he'll bottle the olive oil for them and ship it. And wow, he was off to the races. And I was standing right behind him going, you rascal. He enjoyed it. And Jennifer says I'm wrong, but I told her that she was doing events down at the new Balboa Bay Club. She was in charge of it. I'm going to do events here. She says, oh, Mom, you don't know what you're doing. I know. A couple of years later, she came on up, and we had a very successful private event venue because of that.
So many amazing examples. So many amazing examples about family, and just how how many families have stuck together to make their farms a success.
Hello. I just have a general question if anyone wants to answer, but since COVID, the sales avenues or ways of making money for farmers changed a lot. Some people pivoted into maybe high labor direct sales, and the CSA had a random bump, and the farmers markets maybe struggled. And I'm just curious where people see the direction for your farms for sales, if direct is the best approach, if wholesale is growing. I'm just kind of curious in general from anyone what you see as like the way that you see your farm succeeding moving forward after such a kind of mix up.
Oh, I would like to just briefly say, so we had to close our tasting room on March 15th, 2020. And we sell 95% of our wines direct to consumers. So then our channel was cut off. So we just sitting around at home. A couple of weeks later, some other vintners were already like doing virtual tastings, and we wanted to do, because I'm a chef too. We wanted to incorporate food, and of course, my favorite food is Mexican cuisine. So it was a Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. And then I said, well, Taco Tuesday is already a hashtag that is known. So my daughter says, but no, we can't do it today. Let's like really hash it so that we can go start with a bang. And I said, no. I had just harvested some potatoes, baby potatoes, and I had some Mexican sausage. And I said, we're doing it today, but it cannot just be Taco Tuesday. So we called it Taco Tuesday Vino y Más, wine and more. And we were live on Instagram at 5:00 that day. And because everyone was hanging out at home, guess what? It was such a great success that we did it every Tuesday. And we would send the recipe just post it on social media. And then what wine we were going to pair with that recipe. I mean, we did from pozole and Pinot Noir, really fun, really delicious dishes. And oh my gosh, so people would order, I mean, the wine, there was plenty of time to order the wine, and they would prepare the dish that we were preparing live. And oh my God, we actually increased our sales by at least 35%. And our tasting room was closed. There was a lot of hanging fruit out there that just needed to be picked. And we found consumers that care about wine, and they were at home. They even enjoyed it even earlier than like that traditional glass of vino while you're cooking. They started a little bit earlier. So,
Amber, was your tomato sauce a pandemic baby, or did that predate the pandemic?
That was that predated, but because we do both package and fresh, and a lot of our fresh produce business is restaurants, so we really had to shift and find different retailers to sell to, but our online sales really like skyrocketed for the packaged products. So one of the things that I'm looking into moving forward is selling fresh produce direct through the mail. So I'm trying to figure out the logistics on how to do that. And we are certified organic, so sustainable packaging, all of that is something that's important to us. So that's something that I'm looking into for this season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glenda.
Well, not specific to any one farm, but One of the things that I think is critically important to helping all farmers take advantage of whatever opportunities they choose to seek is making sure that that full economic ecosystem is in place and functioning well. And by that, what I mean is access to these markets, the research on small and medium scale technologies that can really help somebody work. That's a whole new area we're moving cooperative extension into. We're now putting several brand new advisors around the state to help form regional food systems, really looking at supply chains and markets, and folks looking at bio-based products, which could be another profit center for farms, the agro-tourism. Broadband. You can't be doing that kind of Taco Tuesday online if you don't have good broadband. And, the drones and robotics we were talking about earlier, we have a real problem in rural parts of California where there isn't access or bandwidth to actually take advantage of technologies. So all of this kind of stuff is something that we're trying to work with, similar to how CDFA does California Grown and several other programs, to make sure that safety net and that support system is there for the farmers to utilize and take advantage of.
Chrissy, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, so for us, for our chili powder before the pandemic, we were about 80% direct to restaurants. And so we had to pivot a lot and try to figure out what that new market was going to be for us. And the most important thing for us was making a sustainable division between the different sales channels we were selling. And that has still been our priority. Now, just making sure that we have a good cushion in case something happens to wholesale food service accounts again, or just like wholesale to retail accounts or direct to consumer on our website. Just making sure that our business could handle dips in any one of those places, and investing time and energy in all of them across the board to make sure that we can be resilient across whatever happens, whether it's inflation, whether it's changes to how people are eating out, or if people are eating at home again, or if people are shopping in different ways. It's trying to be as resilient to any of those shifts.
And Sarah, you have so many touch points.
I think that you need to be flexible and ready to pivot. The farmer's market closed. I built a farm stand. It was 2 raisin bins, and I had a line of cars to pick up a fresh bouquet of flowers. And so I really think you just have to think outside of the box. Consumers are always going to need food, and market that. If you're growing something that's edible, they want it. You can romanticize it and make it as beautiful as you want. But food is important. Food is expensive finally in America and in California. And I've always wondered why it wasn't. I've been fortunate to travel, and food is a lot more expensive in Europe and other countries. And you're going to see that, how they vote with their dollars, and they'll support you. If you grow something that is good, they're going to buy it at your CSA, they'll show up at your farm stand, they'll visit your farmer's market booth, or they'll subscribe on your website. So it's just staying in communication with your customer. And if you have to pivot, it'll be okay.
I'm coming.
Hi, my name's Camellia, and I have an orchard in Newcastle. So we have 100 acres of mixed fruit called Twin Peaks Orchards. So I'm listening to what everybody's talking about when it's, comes time to pivot. Last year we all had issues with weather. We lost a ton of our crops due to late freezes. So we put in row crops for the first time. So I think pivoting is super important, and also just not being afraid to kind of go outside of your box. We are 100% organic now. So that's been really important. And also we have a lot of resources that I don't think we know about. We participate in like a healthy soils program. There is funding and money and help out there. Start Googling, contact your ag department, contact, CDFA, NRCS, all these different organizations that can help you move your business forward to reach those customers that maybe you didn't have access to before. So just really great to hear everybody's story, and just wanted to introduce another woman farmer here too. So
nice to meet
thanks.
you.
Yeah.
Undersecretary, can you, Secretary Ross talked a lot about the Healthy Soils program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thank you. I was really happy to hear the shout out for Healthy Soils program. This is a program at CDFA that provides incentives also known as money, so that farmers can implement healthy soil practices, which of course is really it's a part of climate smart agriculture. It helps soil to retain moisture, reduces the need for crop inputs. And these are practices like planting windrows or cover cropping, these sort of things that really just build literally the health of the soil. And to add on to that, I think we mentioned earlier how difficult it can be to find these, not just to find these programs that are supportive of farmers, but to access them, because it does take a lot of time to fill out the paperwork. And sometimes there's reporting, follow up to show that you've implemented the practice and to show that there's a benefit from that. So, one thing we do at CDFA is every single one of our programs also includes technical assistance. We work a lot with Glenda's shop to make sure that there are technical assistance providers out there that we pay for that can help you access these programs, find the ones that fit your operation, and then even go a step further, help you fill out the paperwork, and another step further and help you actually implement them. Really, really important part of what we do at CDFA. Another program I just want to give a quick shout out to was our Beginning Farmer and Farm Worker Development Program. This is money to people who are interested in entering agriculture to help them get education, help them access tools, and help our farm workers gain more skills so that they can move ahead, move up in their work and in their careers, stay within agriculture. But there is so much more that we need for them to do, and we want to provide them for that training. So thank you for bringing up healthy soils and giving me that opportunity.
Chrissy.
We had a Healthy Soils Program grant. We just finished up our cycle with it, but we received about $10,000, I think, to plant a hedgerow on our farm to sequester carbon in the soil on the edge of our property, and also act as a wind and dust break from a road that's right nearby. And the technical assistance that we got from some of our local advisors was really helpful. And I know that like the application process got a lot easier, and the reporting on healthy soils was pretty easy to do. So a big shout out to that program. And also, yeah, talking about like different money available. We also just received one of the value added producer grants to help us really take a deep dive into our cost analysis and how to figure out what we can do to be the most sustainable business financially, and where to make different decisions in our business looking forward as we grow. And having those resources is really great for farmers who can't really afford those programs otherwise.
Any other farmer friends who want to introduce themselves?
I want to shout out one other program.
Okay.
And it was mentioned earlier, Master Gardeners. Because if you know folks that are interested in getting in farming, but again, that they don't have the capital or the land necessarily, a really great option to start moving down the path is to take the coursework to be a certified master gardener. You're going to learn everything you need to know to grow plants, that's for sure. But at that point, you can start looking around for those, what you call it, guerrilla plots, because that's a thing, actually. I know folks that do that. They go in vacant lots. They talk the local church into letting them use some land. You know, some farmer may have a little corner they're not using. And you can start building up a business by doing just a tenth of an acre that just grows and grows and grows, especially if you're, California, we've now got home cottage food laws that allow you to do a lot more value added much easier than it used to be. We just passed that in legislation 6-7 years ago, something like that. And I don't think we're fully taking all the advantage of that we could and should yet.
Plus, another advantage of becoming a master gardener, especially if you are bilingual, is we started a program in Napa County where we go to elementary schools, and we actually teach kids how to grow their own food. And it's I'd rather teach someone than give them just the tomatoes. Although we always grow so much produce that we give it to to our colleagues that work with us, but and the senior center and many other nonprofits. But literally, just the joy of watching a little kid grow whatever their favorite vegetable is, it's priceless. And you really teach them just by taking care of that one plant, it empowers them that they really actually want to continue learning and growing their own food. So definitely become a master gardener. I love it.
Oh, no, we have a lot of questions about master gardening, it looks like. The Madera County team is about to have a tour. Glenda will be happy to hear that my house is on the tour for master gardeners. So if you want to see what turf looks like, swing on by.
Hi, everyone. When you brought up teaching little kids, I wanted to give a shout out. My name is Beth Lee. I'm not a farmer. I'm a very not practiced gardener, but there is a wonderful nonprofit in Sacramento called the Food Literacy Center, run by Amber Stott. I'm sure a bunch of you in this room know it. I'm from South San Jose, but I've known Amber since I started writing my food blog. And it's an amazing nonprofit that I've helped from afar. But her whole goal is to get young kids, particularly in low income areas, to learn to eat veggies, grow veggies, know what veggies are from an early age. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. Hearing that, it's just she's amazing, and she's an amazing woman, and who's been doing blazing trails. And I have a Meyer lemon tree and a pomegranate tree that bring me incredible joy and fruit. And I am now thinking about maybe joining a master gardener program, because I can't even tell you, especially during the pandemic, but all for the 30 years I've had this Meyer lemon tree, it just makes me happy. And I eat them all year round. I preserve them. And when I saw something plopping out of the ground especially during the pandemic, but anytime, you could ask my husband, I came running into the house. I mean, even just a little tiny sprout, it brings me so much joy. And I hope I can find more ways to support California farmers, and especially women farmers.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Tell us the name of your blog.
It's Oh My God Yummy, omgyummy.com. And I also am a cookbook author. I wrote the Essential Jewish Baking Cookbook during the pandemic.
Wow,
I should-
congratulations.
I should
Thank you.
probably also mention our Master Food Preserver program,
Oh,
so that when you grow all those
That-
fruits and veggies, you can figure out what to do to preserve them.
preserved
That's another
lemons.
program we have in most counties.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I can add.
We have one more.
Okay.
I have two things. I'm Lucia Plum Reyes. I own Moonbelly Bakery here in Sacramento. But the first thing is I wanted to plug the Master Food Preservers. I've been a member of the Sacramento County Master Food Preservers for a few years now. And that's a great resource for farmers, specifically if you're interested in learning about added value products. We've done trainings with some of the small strawberry farms in the Delta, where we teach them how to make jam, in the hopes that once they have that knowledge, they might be able to offer that and create a revenue stream year round by preserving their harvest. So the Master Food Preservers are awesome, and we are always looking for new members. So look that up. And then the second thing was a question about land and land access. I have worked on farms, and that's how I met my husband, a city kid from St. Paul who came out here following his sister, who was working on a farm. She still is working as a farmer, and still, despite after decades, still not being able to get access to land of her own. She's taken a year lease or a 2-year lease, lost the land, found new land. In his case, he wasn't able to find land, but he found work in agriculture now in the seed industry, doing product development. But I saw and I see with the people that I worked on farms with who are still in the industry that accessing land is so hard. So I was sort of wondering your thoughts, any of the panelists, about access to land for farming, if not in a tiny way, but in a way that gives you enough land on a long-term scale that you can really hope to make it a profitable career.
Who wants to tackle that?
I will shout out another program. It's not one of ours, but California Farm Link, and many states have farm links. This is a program that tries to get folks that want land with farmers who have some land they're willing to let other folks farm. Maybe it's some elderly farmers, their kids aren't taking over, or maybe they've just got a few acres they're willing to let somebody else take on for a while for whatever reason. We have a lot of farmers around the state willing to do that. The nice thing about FarmLink is they really go the next step too. They have individual development accounts where if you put $1 in a bank, they get it matched. So you can get a little bit of a savings for equipment, or maybe to make a down payment on a small piece of land. And they hook you up with people to teach you about finance and lending and the business plan, all of that. So there are programs like that out there to really try to help folks make that jump.
All right. Oh, is that our Casey? We have one more question.
It's not so much a question, but a statement to what you just said. Hello, everyone. My name is Najina Guyton. For those of you that know me, I'm not a farmer. Well, I tried for a year. I am a chef and I'm a restaurateur. So, former owner of South Restaurant and soon to be Jim Denny's here in Sacramento. So, for that year during the pandemic that I did farm, I tip my hat to you farmers because that ish is hard. And I only had 2 other farm workers outside of myself. But I am offering to anyone, I still own my 2-acre farm that I have that's across the street. It's off of Garden Highway, across from the river. As much as I'd hate to let it go, I'd really like somebody else to take that space over. Just grow some vegetables for me is all I ask. But I've held on to it. I've had it for about 3-4 years. And I thought about selling it because between opening restaurants, being a chef, being a single mom, I just didn't have the time to be out there. So just putting that out there.
Awesome. Casey, can you give Najina the mic one more time? Najina, tell us more about your new restaurant. When is it opening?
Anybody from the planning or building department in here? If they're not, we will open the 2nd week of April.
Okay.
If they are, after all of our permits pass, of course.
And tell us the name again of the restaurant.
Oh, Jim Denny's.
Jim Denny's. Okay, fantastic. Well, good luck with that. So,
Yep.
All right.
I have a wrap up question. Again, for those of you who've forgotten, I'm still Casey from California Grown. When we talk about agriculture and consumers, and we talk about sustainability, I think immediately what everyone thinks is environmental, which is important, right? And I've heard many of you talk about sustainable packaging and organic farming and windbreaks and nobody said beneficial pests, but I just said it. So now ladybugs. Okay. But the other things that our team talks about is really the 3 E's, right? So environmental, that's the one everyone thinks about when we talk about sustainability. And then there's equity. And we've spent a lot of time talking about our people and why they matter. And I think in California, we put that forward. In the third one we've talked a little bit about is economic, right? Or survival, and how your business is not really sustainable unless you can economically survive, to your point, because you can't keep doing right by your people and your land if you can't stay in business. And to that end, I would love to ask everyone on the panel what you wish people knew about agriculture. Can we start with Amelia? I'll put you in the hot seat.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's my therapy. I mean, growing and then being able to eat what I grow. It's instead of paying a shrink, I got on and then I cook the ingredients that I grow. But it's farming sustainably. It is so incredibly important that it's not just for the environment per se, but the people that actually work our vineyards as well. But also in the way we make the wine, our office, and we're actually having certified sustainable in everything, not just in our farming practices, but also how we also save energy, and we only use packaging materials that are not detrimental to the environment. And it takes a lot of effort, but people really need to know that ultimately it is also good for business. It's not just good for the environment and the people that actually work in the vineyards or helping us making the wine, removing the must from those huge tanks. But it really is good for everybody. And I think that is very, very important, that for a business model to survive and do very well, it has to be good for everyone. So we are from this point on, all of our labels are going to have that very hard to get certification on the back on everything that we do.
I'll go next. I'm next in line. I wish everybody knew the depth and the breadth and the scope of California agriculture, how much we do here, how much we grow, over 400 different specialty crops, how entrepreneurial our farmers are, how resourceful, how deeply they care for the land that they farm on. That would be a big win for me. So I try to spread that gospel everywhere I go, and I hope you do too.
There are so many things I wish people knew, including a renewed belief in science itself. But if I had to pick one thing, it would be how we talk about water. Because when we talk about water, and I'm talking in general, we talk about water for the environment, water for cities and industry, and then we talk about water for agriculture as if it's some other industry that's doing something that has nothing to do with people. I mean, water going to agriculture to grow food is water going to cities. It's people. There's no need for agriculture if people weren't living in cities, if we were all living on our own little piece of property, growing our own little food supply. That's why we have agriculture, so people can live in cities and do other things. And to talk about water the way we do just creates such bad policy and not the best way to invest in infrastructure all too often. And we really need to get over that.
I'll go next because I am, but that's really hard to follow because that's that is a big passion in water, and we're in a obviously California is in a drought, although we wouldn't know it with as much snow and everything that we've seen. But water is very important. I think what I would really like people to know, I was born and raised a city kid. I had no intention of getting into farming. I had no idea how accessible the food was. I'm very lucky that growing up in the Los Angeles area, I had Pierce College, and they had a farm, and so I was able to go and see where your food comes from. And I wish more people knew that because we did have to do a pivot from tourism to adding farmers markets to our docket. And that is an amazing amount of work. And I give props to everyone with their fresh produce that has to do that on a weekly basis, 7, 8, 9 times a week. I do 3, and that's enough. But people are learning and want to know where their food truly comes from, and that it does come from agriculture. It has to come from somewhere and from the dirt to begin with. And I think that more people need to learn that, and the work that we're doing with the students is where it all starts, especially in the city environments. So truly knowing where the food comes from is something that it sounds odd, but people need to know where that starts.
I'm going to tap onto what Glinda said a little bit, but I think that a California farmer is an endangered species. And it's something that, that you don't see more people going into agriculture, whether it is the land access or the hard work or the water and regulatory aspects of it. And those are things that we need to talk about, and you need to share and have those conversations at the dinner table, with your families, with your friends, with anyone, because a farmer will go away at some point if things continue to stay in the current climate that we have it. And I hate to see that. I as a fifth generation farmer here in California, we often have the discussion at the dinner table is that should we stay here, or are we going to be more valuable somewhere else out of California, Casey? I hate to say that sometimes, but it's hard work, but we're endangered to a certain extent, and we don't talk about that. We don't protect ourselves or advertise that because it's not a comfortable conversation, but have them.
I think we've touched on this a little bit already today, but just there's so much more to farming than just harvesting something and getting it out the door. People who are working on farms, who are running farms, are doing so many things to try to get people the food that they need or whatever product they're creating into the hands of other people. And so really recognizing all of the work that goes into creating the different things you eat, whether it's fresh produce or value added produce, and just recognizing that there are so many hands involved in the process and so many different aspects of production that you might not think of go into making that.
Yeah, I guess what I wish people would know, it's just how much farming impacts so many people. I think it's easy to kind of, we drive by all these farms and don't really think twice about all the people that are affected by farming. And just how, like what was said, how there's less and less younger generations that are getting into farming and what that really means for the future of, the food that we eat. Because we need farmers to be able to sustain, our communities. So I think that's a really important thing to just take note of and remember.
All right. Thank you, panel. Casey, I think we're going to end on that one. I just want to thank all of you, our officials here, and our beautiful farmers. I represent an audience that cares deeply about farmers. But I have to be honest, it wasn't until this trip that I realized how connected you are to the survival of this country. And between talking with all of you and talking with Secretary Ross yesterday, you are all so important to this country. And I just want to thank you all for the work that you do. So let's give them a round of applause. And thank you. Thank you to the farmers in the audience and everyone who came here who supports farmers. Casey, thank you to you and the California Grown team and the incredible work that you do and for bringing us here. It's really been an honor. And again, happy International Women's Day, everyone. And I hope you all stay and network a little. Thank you so much.